Out of here, but I looked at it. I saw there were all kinds of various ways in which each of these texts are dealing with love text. Even the Markan text, which gives almost a kind of antithesis between the right way of worshiping and the right way and the wrong way of worshiping. So as we look at these texts, we can see how that they are talking about love. Certainly, the text of the Song of Solomon talks about love that sounds like the eros love talked about in the Greek studies, the love between man and woman. But as I mentioned earlier in our service, many scholars and theologians have suspected that this was actually a kind of an analysis between God and His people, or God and those who would serve and worship Him. And so likewise, that you look at it and you see this is a kind of joyous love. This is the kind of love that you can really look forward to. That concept of anticipation is found also in the Psalm text. Some of the very words talk about that his tongue is like a pen of a ready scribe. The scribes of their day, of course, were the people who had the ability to write down stuff. People were trained in how to write down text. That's maybe all they did, but actually, in Egypt, probably one of the best jobs you could get and do would be a scribe. You would be trained in the language and how to understand the various texts. You were, in fact, one of the most intelligent of people in the room because you were literate. We take literacy for granted to some degree in our world today. We read all kinds of things on the internet, on our smartphones. We're able to read so easily. But back in this day and time, in Jesus' day and time indeed, very few people could read and write. Jesus, we know, is able to apparently to read Hebrew, which was what's required of a young Jewish boy. When he gets to bar mitzvah, he has to be able to read from the Torah. So they have to learn to read a little bit of Hebrew. It's quite probable, since Jesus was in a time in which there was Romans around, he probably also could speak a certain amount of Greek. Greek was the common language that was used in their day and time for carry on business. As a carpenter, Jesus would have had to be able to carry on this kind of business. And so the scribes are very important to doing that. And so he's talking about how the anticipation of the love that the person was looking forward to was like a scribe with a ready pen. The person was ready with anticipation to take hold of this text that the master would give to them. And this gives us brings us to our text as I read here today. Reading from your New King James Version. James 1:17 through 27. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, and comes down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow of turning. Of his own will he brought us forth by the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. So then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath, for the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Therefore lay aside all filthiness and overflow of wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. Be but doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man observing his natural face in a mirror. For he observes himself, goes away, and immediately forgets what kind of man he was. I've got that problem sometimes. I've got a lot of memory problems with me all the time. But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in it is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work. This one will be blessed if in what he does. If anyone among you thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his own heart, this one's religion is useless. Pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their trouble and keep oneself unspoiled from the world. This provides an interesting view of the early Christian church. I say that because it's now become fairly accepted that James's epistle is probably one of the earliest texts having been written. We'd always heard it was probably one of the Pauline texts, because Paul's out there writing these letters all the time. But Paul doesn't even actually begin his first missionary journey until sometime after 37 A.D., and that's the very time in which the Epistle of James was written. I remember Martin Luther said of James that he was the epistle of straw, and that's, of course, built partly upon his statement that faith without works is dead. That comes on into the second chapter. And of course, you had Paul talking about that faith alone you could have would be a way of obtaining salvation. And so Martin Luther was really into Paul. He was not too much into James. But the thing about it is, if you read further the letters of Paul and read the letter of James, you see that they were both very similar in many respects. They looked at things from different perspectives. Paul was the evangelist. He went out and told people about the Lord, how they can be saved, how they can know and feel the love of God within them. But James was the pastor, dealing with people who he knew, a lot of people who said that they were saved but were not saved at all. He talked about how that you have to be doers of the word, not just talking about it. Talk is cheap, we like to say. And that's exactly what James was dealing with at that time. But James begins our text here with every generous act of giving, every good work, every perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father. This is indeed talking about the love of God. And he talks about it in a very powerful, individual way. The love of God is every perfect thing. Everything that is any kind of perfection at all comes down from the Father. And so that leads me to a song I wish to sing at this time. A song entitled, Our Father's Love. Mira, Our Father's Love. The love of God. The love of God is greater far than tongues of pen can ever tell. It goes beyond the highest star and reaches to the loveliest well. The guilty pain below the dire, God gave his Son to win. His erring child he reconciled and pardoned from his sin. The love of God, how rich and pure, how measureless and strong, it shall forevermore endure the saints and angels' song. No, not yet. I'll tell you. But then he goes on to tell a bit more. He tells us that you must understand this, my beloved. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger, for your anger does not produce God's righteousness. He's getting into the nitty-gritty of things. It's often been said that we're blessed with 2 ears and 1 mouth. I was thinking about yesterday. I was looking at the special service they were having in Washington D.C. How many watched that? Special service from the cathedral. Did watch that? I watched it, and they had several speakers, and one of them was President Obama. And one thing that I've always kind of noticed, the people who do cartoonists always notice his ears. His ears stick way out. You know, he has big wide ears on the guy, and it's very slender face. But I was thinking about this very thing here, where you talk about how that it's more important to be able to listen. We are given 2 ears. That means we're supposed to do twice as much listening, and only one part of it supposed to be talking. Indeed, we're supposed to be listening, maybe more than that. We're supposed to be keeping quiet and not saying anything until you really have something important to say. I remember a guy one time was kind of a quiet guy, and people asked him, "Why don't you say anything?" And I said, "Well, I'm just waiting until I have something important to say." And that's what he believed in. And indeed, maybe we ought to be able to do that too. So oftentimes we shoot off. We say things that we may be afraid of. And once you get it out, Jesus taught us that the song is like a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways. It slashes right and left. And so if we say too much, if our tongue gets the better of us, we say, then it can destroy us. That's what James is talking about here. We're to watch how we talk. And we are to be careful about what we do with our tongue. You must understand, my beloved, he said, be quick to listen and slow to speak. Therefore, rid yourselves of all sordidness and rank growth of wickedness, and welcome with meekness the implanted word that has the power to save your souls. Meekness is what Jesus talked about. Blessed are the meek, for such is the kingdom of heaven. The meek are given a special place in our lives and society. A special person will come along at one time, and it will be something to be said of him that he did a golden deed. Somebody did a golden deed, proving himself a friend in need. Somebody sang a cheerful song, brightening the sky the whole day long. Was that somebody you? Was that somebody you? Somebody's thought 'tis sweet to live, willingly said, I'm glad to give. Somebody fought a valiant fight, bravely he lived to shield the right. Was that somebody you? Was that somebody you? Somebody filled the days with light, constantly chased away the night. Somebody's work brought joy and peace. Surely his life shall never cease. What's that somebody you? Was that somebody you? But now also love has other qualities as well. If you think that you are religious and do not bridle your tongues, but deceive your hearts, their religion has no strength at all. Oftentimes we get in the process of being religious, and it's so easy when we do that in church. We have things we have to do. You know, there's an order of service. You have to follow the order of service. Sometimes that can hamstring you somewhat. If you can only do it according to that particular way, it kind of makes me sound a lot like the Pharisees that was spoken of in the Markan Gospel. And they had a situation where there's a question of washing of hands. Now, I read this text here and I thought to myself, my goodness gracious, I must be a Pharisee then, because I must always wash my hands before I eat. I would never dream of doing anything like that. But of course, there was a certain way they're supposed to be doing it. Back in their day, the Pharisees and the scribes, they were called the Herodians, were so much involved with having a certain way of doing things. I mean, even in the temple, there were certain places for the Gentiles to go to. There was even a special place and way in which you could curse out a Gentile on a certain side of the temple. They had all those details written into the law. I've got a book at home that's a modern version of what's called the Mishnah, which gives the laws of how you should live your life, and it's extreme. I know that it mentions talk about the bottles and the plates and how they should be cleaned. For instance, if you get yourself a pot, someone gives you a pot, and you decide to cook a roast in it, cook some beef in it, that pot can only be used for beef only. Once it has been sanctified with meat in it, it's only to be used for meat. Can't be used for vegetables. You can't have them come in there together. This is the beef. This is the meat pot. You have to have another pot for the vegetables. And that's very, very picky. That's part of current Jewish law as a governor, how you conduct your life and how you conduct yourself. So that's the kind of detail that Jesus was talking about. It doesn't make sense. I mean, I got some 3-quart pot at home. I might use it for fixing mess of string beans and potatoes, and then I might take it out, empty that stuff out, and I may put a chicken in it and cook the chicken later on. Have that kind of a meal together. I don't see the problem with that, and Jesus would probably not see a problem with it either. Jesus would probably wouldn't see a problem at all in that at all, because that's not important. That's not what's important about things. And that's what we come to sometimes in church work. Sometimes we get away from what's really important, the nitty-gritty, the truth of love itself, is that we're to love others as we want to be loved ourselves. That's what Jesus taught, the great commandment. Thou shalt love thy God with all thy heart, mind, soul, and strength, and thy neighbor as thyself. That's the heart of the law according to Jesus. And so what does James say? What's true religion? Religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this, to care for orphans and widows in their distress. That's what the prophets often spoke of. That's what James was echoing that time. That we're supposed to be caring about others. We're supposed to be sharing our love. We have the love that's joyous and having expectation for love, and this is supposed to be shared with others. And that's what we find in another little song I wish to sing for you, entitled Share His Love. The love of God has wrought and does expands, deeper and wider than sea. love reaches out to all to bring the abundant light. For God so loved the world, his only Son he gave. Share his love by telling what the Lord has done for you. Share his love by sharing of your faith. And show the world that Jesus Christ is real to you every moment, every day. That's what ultimately we're supposed to do as Christians. We're supposed to put aside the mechanical things that will get in our way. We're to go out and to share what God has done for us. I put off for a long time going around visiting in this neighborhood. And finally I got up to go. I prayed to the Lord would give me the strength to do that. You know, we're always afraid of that. You know, go up, knock on the door. Someone said, "Who are you?" I remember going up in Indiana one time and knocking on the door and saying I was a Southern Baptist missionary. They were talking about starting a church. And she asked, "What are you doing up here?" And they didn't like the idea of a Southern Baptist church. And I guess maybe there were plenty of Baptist churches up there. American Baptists are pretty strong. They have a whole bunch of those independent Baptist churches down the road. There are all kinds of Baptists around there, so really didn't need another church, Baptist church along there, and certainly not a Southern Baptist church. And that's the kind of thing you're afraid that someone's going to hit you like that. But every person I spoke to in this community here were always open. They thanked me for coming. A few of them have given the idea that they might come and join us sometime. I'm looking forward to the day that the first person walks in that door from that community. I'm looking forward to that. That'll be the first person that comes, and I hope they come eventually. But until they do, I'm always going to be ready to go out and to share the gospel with them. Go out and talk to them. As that song says, and as James told his people to do, that we should care for the widows and or those who are in need. We should reach out and be reaching for them. That's the kind of love that we are to have as Christians. Jesus came to this earth. He came and ministered to other people. He healed. He taught with a special type of talk that nobody else had been able to teach before. Even as a child, he was known, even when he was evidently had just finished having his bar mitzvah so he could get into the church and to talk to the elders, and they have marveled at his understanding, his grasp of the scriptures. That's who we have as a Lord. That's who we have as a Savior. That's who we have as who is now sitting at the right hand of God the Father Almighty. And we need to go forth willingly to tell other people about that thing as well. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, I do thank you that we have a God who loves us, so has given us your Son. And we have